Well, I want to welcome you to another fabulous flip lesson for Mr. Moore and Mr. Rockenstein's math class. Today, we're going to be talking about the area of a compound polygon, sometimes called a complex polygon. And our objective by the end today is that you're going to know what a compound polygon is, but then also you're going to be able to determine the area of a compound or complex polygon. And the first thing I want to talk about is just a reminder of what a polygon is. Polygon is a two-dimensional shape that has straight sides. There's no crossing of those sides and there's no openings. And then the other two things I want you to remember is our two formulas for area that we've been working on. One, for a rectangle or a parallelogram, we talk about how area equals base times height. And so that's how we figure out the area of a rectangle, a square, parallelogram, objects like that. For a triangle, we that formula changes a little bit. For a triangle, the formula is area equals base times height and then divided by 2. And these are key because you're going to be using both of these formulas when we try to determine compound polygons. A compound polygon is really just a polygon that we can break up into several different shapes. And so if we look at this polygon right here, if we needed to really determine it in order to figure out the shape, we don't have a formula to figure out a shape like this. But if we broke it up, if we divided it into two different shapes, that's really easy for us now because we know what the formula is to find the area for a square. So if this, if the height was 4 and the base was 4 here, we would just say, oh, well, the area of this object is 4 times 4, which is 16. And so let's say if this was centimeters, we would say just this square part, the area is 16 centimeters squared. Well, and then we can look at the triangle too, and we know, well, if this is height is 4, then this height must also be 4. I'm sorry, I'm going to move the triangle over a little bit. So we know this height is also going to be 4 centimeters, and then we know this base is going to be 4 centimeters too, just because I did make them the same. Well, how do we figure out the area of a triangle? Well, it's base times height and then divided by 2. Well, 4 times 4 is 16, and then 16 divided by 2 equals 8. And so now I know, well, the area of the triangle is 8 square centimeters. The area of the square is 16 square centimeters. So if I had these two shapes together, what would my area be? Well, it's really easy. I just add those two areas together, which gives me 24 square centimeters. So I know this compound, this complex polygon, I've divided it into the smallest amount of parts that I can, which is just these two, and then I figured out the area of those two parts, I added them together. If I go on to this next one, here's another example. Oops, sorry, I drew on my calculator. So let's say we know that this height here is going to be 10. And we know this is 10, this is 8, this is 10. Can we figure all these things out? Well, yes. Again, if we break this up, and I've made it kind of easy because there's lines there. If we break this up, now we're going to do the area for each of these objects. Well, let's start with the middle one. 10 times 8 is 80. So the area in here is 80, let's say, centimeters squared. How do we do the triangle? Well, it's base times height divided by 2. Well, 10 times 10 is 100. Divided by 2 would be 50. And then this one's going to be the same, 50, because it has the same measurement. Now if I added all three of these up in order to figure out, the total would end up being 180 centimeters squared. So now I've determined the area of this complex compound. We're going to turn it up a notch a little bit. What if we had a shape that looked like this? Base is 9 up here. This is 7. This is 6. How are we going to divide it? Well, they've already kind of given us some dotted lines. If I figure out just this rectangle part first, 7 times 9 gives me 63 meters squared. And now, well, this doesn't say the base. Well, up here it says it. So 9 times 6 is 54. 54 divided by 2 gives me 27. So this is 27 meters squared. If I add the two of them together, I end up with 90 meters squared. One last one, a little more complex. You might sometimes have to do several different shapes. If you look at this one, we have a bunch of different areas, a bunch of different polygons that we need to break this up into. So if I take one triangle at a time, this triangle and this triangle are identical. So I'm going to start with those. I'm going to use my calculator. 11.1, which, oh wait, that's actually not it. What's my height? My height here is 9.3. So if I do 9.3 times the base, which is 4.3, equals 39.99. But I need to divide that by 2, and I get 19.995. So that means this one is 19.995, and this one is 19.995. Now if we do this middle triangle, I know the height is 9 and the base is 18.1. So let's go 9 times 18.1 equals 162.9. But now it's a triangle, so I divide by 2 and I get 81.45. So this one's 81.45. And now if I do this rectangle here, base is 18.1, height is 9.3. So 18.1 times 9.3 equals 168.33. And since it's a rectangle, I just leave that. So I've gotten all these different areas, and now if I added them up, we find out our total. So 168.3, and I could add 81.45, and then I add 19.995, and then I add another 19.995, and I end up with a total of 289.77 kilometers, and it's squared because it's area. So just a quick review. Compound polygon is the same as a complex polygon. And it just means that it's a couple different shapes that are put together. And we need to break it out, break that up into those shapes in order to figure out the area. To do that, we try to make it into the smallest number of shapes we can. We don't want to have like 5 million shapes. We want to try and break it up into the smallest number of shapes we can, where we can figure out the area, figure out those different areas, and then we add them together. Remember our two formulas for a rectangle, parallelogram, square, rhombus, it's base times height. And if it's a triangle, it's base times height divided by 2. Hope you enjoyed, hope you get it, and hope you have a great time practicing.